So it's been a little over a week since the FDA approved the use of the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine here in the United States. And you might be thinking that's pretty good news for the stock price, right? Well, not so much. In this video, I'll explain exactly what happened here, which is actually a fairly short explanation. And for those of you that are first-time investors, this will help you put into better context what happened with this stock and what happens with many other stocks that see their company in the headlines in a positive light. So you'll want to stick around for that. Stay tuned. Hey folks, Richard Walls here, helping you with career development and personal finance. And if those topics are of interest to you, I'd highly recommend subscribing to my channel down below and hitting the notification bell so you get notified of when I post new content. And of course, if you like what you see, do make sure to hit the like button. It would help out my channel quite a bit. So with that said, let's get to it. So I'll tell the story in this way, and we're gonna go to my screen to see what's going on. So with Pfizer, as I mentioned in previous videos, which you can check out in the links below in the description, I mentioned that this is a legacy company. It's a very old, established pharmaceutical company. And when you look at a company like this versus other maybe startup companies, particularly in biotech, which is a newer field relative to pharmaceutical companies, what you're seeing here is more of a value stock. You're not seeing a growth stock, which you would see with Moderna or BioNTech, which are seeing crazy stock price growth because of the news of the vaccine and the developments that they've made with a vaccine. And for a company like that, like BioNTech or Moderna, they don't have a drug in the market today. And so once they do have one, that's going to be essentially the first that they have in the market, which is going to be a huge windfall for them, and that's going to be a signal to investors as far as confidence goes that other drugs that they have in the pipeline may also have a good shot at going to market eventually. But for Pfizer, it's not going to make as big of an impact having this vaccine. And granted, I've thrown in a whole bunch of numbers as far as what they expect to deliver in calendar year 21 next year. But the impact isn't going to be as much for Pfizer, relatively speaking, as it would be for a Moderna or a BioNTech, which is why their stock price has seen dramatic growth. But let's look at Pfizer really quick. Here's what's happened. We've known since early in the year that Pfizer, amongst many others, were working on a vaccine. And we get closer to where we are now, which as they go through the clinical trials, phase 1, 2, then 3, and then completing, or at least I wouldn't say completing quite yet, but well, I guess you could say completing phase 3 clinical trials to where they understand whether or not they've met their primary endpoints, which is the effectiveness or efficacy. I believe those are two different terms they use in a medical sense, but nonetheless, they get to a point where they've identified that this is an effective vaccine. So leading up to the actual, it already been approved in the UK, and then we were waiting for the FDA approval here in the United States, which actually came, if you look at this chart here, I've got it on 5 years, but let me just bring that out to a month. The approval actually happened on December 12th, I believe. I think the 11th they were deliberating, and I think at that point, they mostly gave the green light. They mostly gave the good news, and then 12th, I think, was the official thumbs up. But you see, up until that point, you saw the stock price rise a little bit, hitting an apex of $42.56. And since then, it's been on a decline. Well, you might imagine, or you might be thinking, why is this declining after the good news has come out? Here's the most simple explanation. This is going to be especially helpful for first-time investors. That stock price rise is a result of the news that would be expected. Investors were expecting a catalyst in the near term. And so they're investing ahead of time in the event that this ends up going through approvals. But once the approval happens, there's no other near-term catalyst that's going to add value to this company or to this stock. And not only that, again, I think people have looked at this, and if you look at the long term, this is why I had it out to 5 years a moment ago. Over the long term, this has actually been around the same price band, if you will. And if you go out to, even longer than that, you see that there was a peak back in the early 2000s of $45. Actually, I think it might have gone a little bit higher at some point before that, but about $45 is about the highest it's ever been. And so to look at where the stock price was just about a week or two ago at 42, I believe investors looked at this and realized, well, the likelihood of this breaking past its all-time highs based on the news of this vaccine alone, it's very unlikely. And so once the news actually broke out, there was not a whole lot of reason to hold on after that point. In fact, I think some people already started dropping out by then. When you consider the risks associated with the vaccine, and not so much the side effects for patients, which is also a concern. This vaccine was developed in a fairly short amount of time relative to other drugs that take, a decade, plus or minus a few years. This was done fairly quickly, and of course we've got what we got going on. It's very important that this come out quickly. But nonetheless, the long-term side effects, that's always going to be a little bit of a question mark. And then there's always the risk of, this is a new drug platform. This is done with an mRNA platform, which had never been done before. So there are challenges here with that, with manufacturing, and then of course with logistics. In this particular case, the vaccine in question requires extremely cold temperatures. And as much as Pfizer is, as well as any pharmaceutical company equipped to deliver something like this, it's still going to be a risk in terms of delivering. So I think all that captured in here was reflected in the stock price, especially after the sell-off that you've seen here. And just as a comparison point against the S&P 500, S&P has been fairly flat, increasing a little bit. This does not trend with the S&P. It actually underperforms that. It's actually back in line to what it was about a month ago. So again, it's an established company. It's not going to see a lot of benefit from the vaccine relative to its current size. And then with all the risks and challenges still to come, I think that's why people ended up pulling out and thought that they can get in early on in the rumors that they were going to get the approval. I think that's what's happened. A lot of folks sold off and they captured what they captured because they realized there's not going to be any other near-term catalyst for the company. This is also very common for any company that finds themselves in the headlines. And you'll see plenty of other cases, don't get me wrong, you'll see plenty of other cases where companies see a rise in the stock price leading up to news, potentially even a quarterly earnings report. The quarterly earnings report comes out, and in some cases the stock will just stay flat. Maybe there might be a little bit of a sell-off, or the stock could grow exponentially, just as we've seen with Tesla. There had been rumors that earnings was going to look pretty good. It was going to be positive. And once the news actually did come out and was officially announced through their quarterly earnings report, we saw the stock price over time in the last year grow leaps and bounds. So it can happen either way. I think in this case, there's a lot more context around Pfizer and its stock history, that there just didn't seem to be a whole lot of upside for anyone to hold on to the stock for growth purposes. You can still hold on to it, obviously, for dividends, which I'll talk about in another video, but that's by and large the reason we saw the stock price with Pfizer here recently. So I hope that helps. I'd love to hear your comments. in the comment section down below of why you thought the stock price had declined. And of course, we still have plenty of time to go. There's all of next year. If those of you out there that are holding onto the stock, things could change if they manage to work out the logistics and overcome some of the risks and challenges. This picture could change, but again, as I mentioned in previous videos, I don't see the stock price going up much farther than it already has. So those are my 2 cents. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just relaying information and my own observations. Do your due diligence. Make sure you do your research before investing, of course. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.